Hi everybody, I'm Greg Fishel and welcome to bonus weather video number 2 for this week. And we're going to be taking a look today at the length of day versus the length of night at various locations around the globe and at various times during the year. And it may actually surprise you. A lot of you that don't like wintertime equate being farther north with just being a bad thing. But sometimes being farther north actually has its advantages, as I will illustrate here in just a little bit. So I'm going to take myself out of the picture here so that you can see all of this data, and all I have to do is figure out a way to get my cursor down here to do that. And there we go. Okay, so this is solar data by latitude at 80 degrees west longitude. Now, Raleigh-Durham, the airport, is at about 78.8 west degrees longitude. And so I simply picked 80 as the closest main longitude line. So you're running north-south along that line, and we're starting at the equator and going to the North Pole. So on the first day of winter, December 21st, at the equator, you have about 12 hours and 8 minutes of daylight. By the time you get to about 30 degrees north latitude, which is south of Raleigh, we're at about 36, you have 10 hours and 13 minutes, and then by the time you get to 40 degrees north, which is about where New York City is, they're down to 9 hours and 20 minutes. By the time you get to 50 degrees north, which is near the U.S.-Canadian border, about 8 hours and 4 minutes. And by the time you get to 60 degrees north, it really drops off in a hurry. 5 hours and 52 minutes. At the Arctic Circle, just barely over 2 hours. And then, once you get just north of the Arctic Circle, it is completely dark on December 21st. It is dark 24 hours a day, and they don't see any light, especially at the North Pole, for quite some time. All right, so now let's go on ahead and move on to the first day of spring, or thereabouts, March 21st. And here you see that just about everybody is in the same ballpark, okay? And this is why we call it the equinox, equal day and equal night. And that's not only true at any one given location, but it's true just about everywhere. Now, the Earth's atmosphere plays a role here in the sense that it actually bends some of the incoming solar radiation through the atmosphere, and so we see that light earlier than we would otherwise see it. And so that's why we're actually seeing a little bit more than 12 hours of light at these various locations. And at the North Pole on March 21st, it becomes light all the time, okay, and basically stays that way for 6 months. Okay, so now let's move on ahead to June 21st, and here's when I want to make my point about being north having its advantages. At the equator on the first day of summer, you have about 12 hours and 8 minutes of daylight. So they really don't change a whole lot at the equator from one day to the next through the entire year. But looky here, as we head north, the amount of daylight increases. So by the time you get to 30 degrees north, you've got a little over 14 hours of daylight. 40 degrees north, over 15 hours. At 50 degrees, 16 and a half hours almost. And by the time you get to the Arctic Circle, it's light all the time, and it stays light all the time, all the way up to the North Pole. Okay, so the days actually get longer as you go north from March 21st until September 21st. Okay, so here is a diagram showing who's light and who's dark at noon on the first day of winter, the winter in the Northern Hemisphere. And so the sun is directly overhead in the Southern Hemisphere, so that's their summer. We're heading into winter, and it's light all the time down toward the South Pole, okay? And then it's dark all the time up near the North Pole. Okay, so then we move to March 21st, and since everybody just about has the same amount of day and night, about 12 hours apiece, then at noontime, it would be light all the way from the South Pole to the North Pole, and then it's dark over here, and of course, as we head on into the evening, that dark area would move across into North America, Central America, and South America. But basically, everybody has about equal day and equal night at that time. And then on June 21st, it's exactly the opposite, where now it's light all the time at the North Pole, dark all the time at the South Pole, and the sun is directly overhead at 23.45 degrees north latitude. So it almost gets directly overhead at Raleigh, but not quite. It falls about 13 degrees of azimuth, of elevation, shy of being directly overhead. And so here's the last thing I wanted to share with you, and I know that technically it's not called Barrow, Alaska anymore, but I can't pronounce the real name for it, so I'm still going to call it Barrow. So on November 19th of 2022, the sun went down for the last time, at least for a while. And so they have been in total darkness there since November 19th. And they won't see the sun again until January 23rd of 2023. And even then, they'll only get about an hour of it. Sun coming up at 1:03 p.m. and setting at 2:15. Now, by March 21st, they'll have a little bit more than 12 hours of daylight, okay? And then on May 12th, the sun will be up continuously and will stay up continuously until the 2nd of August of 2023, when the sun will rise at 3 a.m. and not set until 2:07 a.m. the following morning. And then finally, on September 21st, they'll be back to about, not exactly, but about 12 hours of light and 12 hours of day. Okay? So the farther north you go, away from the equator, and then the farther south as well, the more volatile these sunrise and sunset times are, the more they change from one time of the year to the next, whereas at the equator itself, there really isn't a whole lot of variance, no matter what time of year it is, regarding the sunrise and sunset. So I thought you might find that interesting, that it's actually an advantage to head north in the summertime, or at least between March 21st and September 21st, as the days do get longer the farther north you go. Okay, that is it for today. Let me put myself back in there just so I can formally say goodbye to you, like that. You all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you again on Monday with our next daily weather update. Next bonus weather video will be coming up next Tuesday. We'll see you then.